Stream, add to stream. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the ADOS Bay Area. No, sorry, I was going to say Bay Area. That's who I am. Hi, I'm Rita Forte from ADOS Bay Area. But welcome to the ADOS California YouTube channel. Please always like, subscribe, and set your notifications. Today, we are going to be here on YouTube talking about the bill HR40. And so we're going to talk about that in a second. Please share this right now. Let people know we're going to be talking about the bill around reparations for African Americans is what the bill says right now. And I'm going to be talking to another member of an ADOS chapter. You guys know him well. I'm going to bring him up into the screen right now. All right. Mr. Reggie from Boston. How you doing today, Reggie?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Speak up a little bit.
How's this? Is this a little better?
Yeah, you got to come probably towards your screen. But what's going on, everybody in the chat? Thanks so much for hanging with us. It looks like we could probably show, your different comments here. I'm usually on another platform, but this is pretty cool. I love it. We could show the different comments on StreamYard. So anyways, we are here today to talk about HR40, of which is a bill that has been presented by the House in Congress, actually dating back, Reggie, since it was called something different, right? Back in 1989, right?
Yeah, I forget what the original bill number was, but they changed it at some point,
Right.
to HR40 to reflect 40 acres and a mule, which is, the central claim, to reparations, those who are entitled to that compensation.
Right. And so yeah, as it got changed to HR40, it is now called the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. Kind of a mouthful, but once again, that is what it's now called, HR40, reintroduced, or maybe it was originally, I think it was originally introduced, I'm sorry, by Rep Jackson, Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas to the House. It has so far has only gotten revised once in 2017 from what I read. Is that correct as well too?
Yeah, that sounds about right. They amended it from what originally John Conyers, may he rest in peace, how he originally introduced it. They changed it from just a general study to a study for proposals, because the conclusion that they reached is that, we understand the damage and we understand that reparations are due. So the commission needs to develop proposals for what reparations would actually look like. That was the goal of the changing of that language, as far as I understand it.
Okay. So I'm going to bring up the bill in a minute. I'm going to first read just kind of the summary of the bill so we could set that up, and everybody knows really the summary of what this bill is about, because what are we here for as American descendants of slavery, the movement, the hashtag? We're here for our justice claim of reparations, which is due to ADOS. So knowing about this bill that is, has been around since 1989, y'all, and has only really been revised once, but really has gained traction in the last, 1.5 years, since 2019. And we'll talk about kind of the flow of the bill so far in a moment. But I do want to bring up, let me see if I can really bring up so everybody can see the bill as I'm kind of reading it through here, okay? So first I'll start to read it. The bill establishes the Commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. The commission shall examine slavery and discrimination in the colonies and the United States from 1619 to the present and recommend appropriate remedies. Among other requirements, the commission shall identify, 1, the role of federal and state governments in supporting the institution of slavery, 2, forms of discrimination in the public and private sectors against freed slaves and their descendants, and 3, lingering negative effects of slavery on living African Americans and society. So let me bring that up, and Reggie, can you talk a little bit about like that summary and, you know, what does that really get across to us?
Well, it gets across a little, but not much, because I think the specificity matters. I think what passed in the California House, even though I'm very wary of calling for reparations at the state level because it's a national issue, it's a national debt. The ADOS activists in California, I really have to salute them because they really argued for and actually were able to get specific language to where we went from just African Americans to where it's specific to where, and I'll just read it directly from here. It's African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. So that specificity matters. And without that, you know, I feel that a court challenge is coming that would just knock that down in terms of, they would argue for, ironically, this is race-based discrimination. I've actually had conversations with lawmakers, with legislators toward, wait, why can't you just put this in? Towards like, if I put in race-based discrimination, they will take me to court the next day and they will knock this down. And that's what we're setting ourselves up for with HR40. If we don't be specific about lineage and not just tie it to race or skin color.
Yes, and today, what we're doing today, everyone, just so you know, ADOS as a movement, as chapters, we've come together to present, along with the Black American DOS caucus, 6 edits to this bill, including, you know, some of the ones that Reggie just said, and we're going to review those today, so we can all really leave today knowing, okay, when people talk about HR40 and why it's flawed and why we need to fix it, these are the 6 reasons why. And so, again, Reggie had mentioned a few of them already. Please also, in the chat, if somebody can also put Breaking Brown and the Tone Talks YouTube channels there, both of them have been talked about HR40 and its flawed and its flaws last year. So make sure you check out their videos as well too. But the purpose again of today is to really talk about 6 specific edits that we can really rally around as ADOS folks, as our ADOS chapters, ADOS people, that we can really tell people about when we leave today. All right. And so with that, I want to go back and actually talk about what's happened with HR40 so far. All right. Let's go back to us really quickly, you guys. So far, this bill has been really gaining steam in 2019. We know this. A lot of people that are here, ADOS folks in the chat, Reggie, you know this. I think even last night on the Breaking Brown show, she mentioned Yvette Carnell, co-founder of the ADOS movement, mentioned that in 2019, a year and a half ago in January, the bill had only 2 co-sponsors, and by the end of 2019 had over 125 co-sponsors in the House. Is that correct, Reggie?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And so what type of advocacy did ADOS have in 2019 to go from 2 to 125, Congress people, congressmen and women to sign on to sponsoring this bill? What was that advocacy by ADOS?
Well, I want to kind of back up a little bit because
Please,
what I saw, I want to back up to, I believe it was 2018, where Yvette Carnell was reviewing a lot of the conditions in the Black Belt in Alabama. She talked about how the UN came there and said, I've never seen anything like this in a first world country. These are third world conditions in the richest country of the world. And I believe it's Terry Sewell, the representative from Alabama, if I have her name right, took her to task and encouraged ADOS activists, not only in Alabama, but around the country, to also take her to task. What happened was a barrage of tweets, calls, emails to her, to Terry Sewell's office, demanding that this be fixed. Not long after that, Terry Sewell, she comes out with tweets and statements saying, I think Paul Ryan was running around Congress at that time saying, I call on Congressman Ryan to put forth this legislation to fix this. And I think it was at that moment it kind of sparked the ideas of what was possible in terms of advocacy. And I feel like that carried over into 2019, because when you couple that with the fact that it's been 400 years, from 1619 to 2019, the timing of that, the Democrats still reeling and trying to find themselves in terms of their loss of Black support, vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton not getting Black vote in key districts. So they're trying to figure it out. And then along with that, here comes ADOS, really ramping up the pressure. So I think all of those things caused Congress to react some appropriately in terms of sponsoring it, but also reflexively as if like, I'm not thinking through this. I just need these crazy Negroes off my back. So here comes 100 co-sponsors, but now, here we are as we're revisiting it to where, we're demanding specificity, as, Tone Talks and Breaking Ground have, excellently laid out, over the years. Absolutely.
And one of the main things, thank you for that, because I actually didn't know that history of 2018. I was able to come across Breaking Brown and Tone Talks at the end of 2018. So really have only been around for almost, a year and a half myself. But all of that being said, I know that just literally almost a year ago, around Juneteenth of last year, was when they actually had a hearing, right?
Yeah, and I was actually there.
You were at the hearing?
Yeah, I was at the hearing.
Okay, so can you talk about that? That was with Ta-Nehisi Coates, Danny Glover, Cory Booker was there to really talk about, this bill, and you were there. Can you talk about that experience and what that did to really ramp up people to get around HR40?
It was as exciting as it was infuriating. It was pandemonium in the halls because we were we were actually like the first ones in line, and then huge line formed, and then how people kind of double up, and then the doors kind of open, people rush the doors, and I guess people who have relationships with Congress or media kind of get in. So I was lucky to get in. I think it was as Senator Booker was wrapping up and they were getting into some of the general testimony, but it was very interesting to see. I think how unprepared the Democrats were to answer a lot of the Republican objections. I so wish Professor Darity was there, because he would have knocked all of that mess down. Like I've never heard such nonsense as I heard coming from some of the Republicans. And
Someone please drop the hearing in the chat too, so people can reference that. But keep going. It's amazing.
And I also never heard such nonsense from the witnesses. They came up and like, what even qualifies them to speak? Like, who is Coleman Hughes? You know, you go from rapping and dancing in the subway to telling me what I'm owed, and you're not even ADOS. It's like, how are you here?
Like, hold on.
And then I think Burgess Owens, football player, total aberration, totally removed
right
from the everyday experiences of Black people. And, you know, here comes, you know, the decadent veil, as Antonio Moore so eloquently puts. Here comes the decadent veil telling me what I'm owed. And then the Democratic side of the panel has no answers. I mean, Ta-Nehisi Coates had a few, but again, I wish that Professor Darity was there, because some of these common objections, as asinine as they are, they're easily knocked down if you are anchored in the data, if you're anchored in the history. And sadly, not everyone on that panel was, and from what I could see, Congress certainly was not.
So, I mean, it still was a spike for the bill. Would you say, or no? Okay, it still was.
I would say absolutely was.
But again, it's almost the reason why we're here today, because there's just so many issues around getting it right. That's basically what you're voicing right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, you know, talk about leading up to where we are right now. I think there's 140 co-sponsors right now on the bill. And we're here to talk about being specific. We're here to talk about specificity, which Yvette Carnell always talks about, tone talks, like you said, and to talk about how we need to get specific with this bill. One other statement that was made last year that I just would like to point out by the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, when he talked about HR40, what did he say last year? Do you remember?
I believe he said, in so many words, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Barack, like, we fought a civil war, so that constitutes reparations. Black president constitutes reparations. And then he says, I don't even know why you're talking to me, because me and Barack Obama both said no to reparations, and we both descend from slave owners. Like, if you don't understand the specificity of our history, you're not prepared to knock down that nonsense. Because, you know, we understand that, you know, Obama did not descend from the builders of this country. You know, right. he descended from, his father was Kenyan, privileged Kenyan, went to Harvard, which is why Obama got to go. He's a legacy. And on his mother's side, the family's into banking and all of this other stuff, inherits nearly $500,000. So Lord knows what he got in vivo. He has no connection to the average ADOS person, not in terms of lineage, and certainly not in terms of his wealth position and how he came up. You know, this man was jet setting all over the place before he hit Chicago.
Right.
You know,
so that was a hit. That was a major. I feel like that was a hit on the bill, on ADOS, but also reinvigorated ADOS, right? Really got us back on not back on track. You know, we're you know, as we say, the heartbeat of this movement and of reparations. But it really kind of spiked us up to say, hey, hold up 1 second, no, and to go even harder. You know what I mean? To really get these changes made. And then really fast forward to I want to fast forward because I do want to get into the way we would like to edit, you know, and fix #HR40. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think maybe I echoed a little bit. But I did want to fast forward to today and the advocacy that ADOS has gotten together to really get behind making the edits of this bill. If this is the bill that's going to be, in Congress, there's also a matching bill in the Senate, which is, I think it's S1083 or something like that, if I'm getting my numbers right, that Cory Booker put forth in the Senate. But to really get behind changing these things, if this is what we have to work with, this commission, this study, we're going to have to change some things, right? So we're starting here with what are the things that we want to change. And this came about last month. It got launched, the campaign hashtag Fix HR40 around Juneteenth, right? You guys launched this, or we as ADOS launched this around Juneteenth, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, the efforts to edit HR40, disparate, individuals and chapters and groups around the country, and of course, Yvette and Antonio have long advocated for changes to the bill, and in some cases, like, look, we have this wealth of history and data at our fingertips. Somebody just needs to grow a backbone in Congress and just write the damn bill.
Right.
And then,
right.
We can figure out different nuances and details, but as long as we get who is owed and who's the culpable party, we can kind of figure the rest out. You owe the descendants of slaves who built the country, and
right.
America owes. So once we establish that, we understand that we have to close the racial wealth gap as part of it, I can figure out the rest.
Right. So let's get into it. I'm going to start pulling up. Again, we have 6 edits to go through. Y'all, we in class right now, so get ready. But after this, you're going to know what we need to really rally around when it comes to HR40, all right? So let's get started here. We're not going to go over the whole bill. It's really not that long. So please go, do your Googles and look it up after this and read it if you haven't already. But let's start with this first edit here, right? So this edit, I'm going to read it for you guys. So commissions involve people, usually a set of anywhere from, I actually don't have there's probably not a, set of 5 to 100 people, but there is a set of people who are going to be coming together to decide this. So what we are asking for, this is our first edit. We want experts only to be working on this commission, right? To really talk about reparations. So commissioners should be selected exclusively by Congress. They should be experts in American history, constitutional law, economics, including stratification economics. And why are we talking about that? Stratification economics, being specific about that.
Well, because of the way that stratification economics speaks to how wealth is distributed, between different strata or different deciles. And it's very important in the context of the United States, especially in the 21st century, because we understand that from 2000 up until now, wealth has calcified in a way that only matched around the Great Depression. So we're kind of like in lords and vassals and feudal systems,
right.
Uber, go drive me somewhere, somebody bring me my food, like this.
Right.
This is crazy. So like the stratification economics, taps into that. And it's also important when we're talking about redistributing that wealth that, again, we talk about this, a lot of this wealth is aggregated at the top. And that's why you have to close it at the mean, at the average. We look at the median so we see how the middle lives, but in order to to properly redistribute the wealth, we have to do it at the average, which takes into account what's being hoarded at the top.
Right. And we're going to get into that because that's actually specifically one of our edits in terms of, in terms of closing the racial wealth gap. So we'll get into that as well. But these experts.
And if I could just say something real quick, especially if we're talking economics and stratification economics.
Yeah.
If Professor William Darity is not in that room, to me, it's not a commission. I'm just going to say it.
Absolutely. And I want to add to that. I meant to mention that these 6 edits actually came from Professor Sandy Darity, the leading economist, when we're talking about reparations. These edits came from, again, the Black American DOS caucus, of which he leads and which he launched and started. So these are actually coming from him. So yes, he needs to be in the room. He needs to be one of these experts for sure. Again, just to finish it up, the experts, they should be experts in political science, sociology, and they should have expertise on the history of slavery, the Jim Crow regime, employment discrimination, wealth inequality, health disparities, unequal education opportunity, criminal justice and mass incarceration, media, political participation and exclusion, and housing inequities. And I just want to quickly go to what the bill currently says. Okay, the bill currently says that it should be appointed 13 people. Again, I was talking about, how many people. So this is going to be a commission composed of 13 members. 3 of them, it says right now, are appointed by the president. So, I mean, don't get me started. 3 members shall be appointed by, right, the Speaker of the House, right? Okay. 1 member shall be
already.
Huh?
I'm just saying, I'm exhausted just with those 2 paragraphs. Like, can you imagine, like, whether it's Trump or Biden? Oh, heaven help us. And Speaker of the House, child.
Right. So our first 6 members, what we doing? Our first 6 members. Then 1 member shall be appointed by the president pro tempore. Sorry, I always mess that up. Of the Senate, who takes the place, I think, for the time being, of the vice president. And then the rest of the 6 members shall be selected from the major civil society and reparations organizations that have historically championed the cause of reparatory justice. Second thing, all members of the commission shall be persons who are specifically qualified to serve on the commission by virtue of their education, training, activism. So these could be activists, right? This is what the bill currently says, folks, or experience, particularly in the field of African American studies and reparatory justice. So I'm just going to throw it to you. What?
Yeah. The biggest problem, I have is when it says activism or experience. It's like, what does that mean? And that's why I support Darity's edits in terms of these people have to be experts in these fields. Now, if they are also activists and have experience and they're also experts in that field, I'd say that's great. But just, walking around with a sign saying reparations now.
Right. Hello.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I've been walking around for 5 years with a sign saying reparations now, put me on the commission.
Yep.
I'm not sure about that.
So again, we're advocating for there to be experts only on this. Again, we talked about the first 6 people are just appointed, right? We don't know who these folks could be, right? So it's very important that we get specific about that. So that's our first edit. Did you want to add anything else to that one?
Yeah. Just piggybacking off of what you said, that, selected by Congress so that it reflects the will of the people so that we don't get into nepotism, to inside deals, to cronyism. If you have Congress participating in the selection of the commissioners, I can call my congressperson. You can call your congressperson.
Right.
The people in the chat can call their congressperson and say,
of the people.
It's like, put Darity on that commission or don't look for me in November. That means something. So I'm in total support of that.
Absolutely. So experts only is the first thing that we are calling for as ADOS in our chapters to fix hashtag fix HR40. All right. Thank you for everybody in the chat. I see you guys. I'm trying to do all of the things at once. You see me moving everything around, but I see everybody. So thank you so much for joining us. Please share this out. We have 5 more of these edits to go to get going. So let's get on to the second one. So we have to talk about, are these folks these experts that we're going to get on this commission going to get paid? We would like to say that they should not get paid. So them or their organizations, there should be a paid professional staff. And while the commissioners' reasonable expenses should be met, unlike the present version of the bill, which I'll go to next, neither they nor any organization to which they belong to should receive a salary, honorarium, or the equivalent of performing this vital national service. This vital national service. I love that part at the end. Can you just, while I pull up what it actually says, sorry, y'all. Can you just expand on why these commissioners shouldn't get paid, even though the bill currently right now says that they should get paid?
For the same reasons as I stated before, we're not looking for cronyism or nepotism or anybody getting the bag. And we were trying to figure this out earlier, like GS18, what does that mean in terms of pay for the general schedule? We found up to GS15 is about 140 grand or so. Mm-hmm. At that point, they're going in $20,000 a year increments. So if you go 3 levels above GS15 to GS18, that's maybe another 60,000. So roughly 200 grand.
Yeah.
That's tempting for me. And I if they were to say, Reggie, be on the commission, if I switch up, why? Because that's 200 grand. But that said, I would say, in addition to what Darity said, that it's a national service, I believe as someone who's an ADOS person who would find themselves on the commission, that it's not just a national service. This is a sacred duty. This is a service to your people.
Absolutely.
I would sleep on the street for 18 months with no pay to get this done.
Absolutely.
I don't care. Like, it's like compensation can't be a part of this. I'm not necessarily against compensation per se, but mm-hmm. it's the appearance of that impropriety. Like, we have to get this right. And if you take away that monetary incentive, some people who are here might go away.
Yeah.
Because their motives may not be pure. But, I totally agree with the accommodating for reasonable expenses, especially us as ADOS people. We ain't got no money. I can't be hopping back and forth on a plane.
Yeah.
You got to pay for that.
Yeah. And I also think that anybody who's considered an expert, if they
already got money.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
I think that's one, but anybody who's considered an expert, why would they not want to get this done? Anybody who really has an expertise on all of those things that we said on our first edit for Fix HR40, I just don't see anybody walking this earth who, would not just want to do this as a service to our country. So So we're here. So that is our second edit to HR for fixing HR40, is that there should be no compensation. Instead there should be reasonable compensation for expenses, and so folks can survive and eat and travel and move around and things like that. So that is our second edit to HR40. Let's continue on. So this is one that actually we are not going to be able to reference in the bill because it doesn't currently exist in the bill as is, right? And this is the eligibility criteria for who is actually receiving reparations, right? This actually does not exist in this form in HR 40 as it stands now. Who will receive forms of reparations? So let me read it for you all. Our eligibility criteria. The commission should be directed to set as eligible recipients Black American descendants of United States slavery. All right. Eligible recipients would need to show that they have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in the United States, a lineage standard, and for at least 12 years prior to the enactment of a reparations plan or a study commission, whichever comes first. They self-identified as Black, Negro, or African American, an identity standard. And I don't know. It baffles me that something like this defining really who's eligible is not in the bill. I mean,
yeah, well, I think there's two things going on. I think the first is when you look at when the bill was formed in the 80s. Prior to the 80s, there weren't a whole lot of Black people who weren't descendants of slaves. There was virtually no Black immigration at that time, and absolutely not before 65. It was extremely nominal. Like even if you look in places like New York, it's only like 20,000 or so Caribbeans at some point. It wasn't really a thing, but as Black immigration has exploded,
right,
the term African American and Black, there's a lot of confusion around that identity. Whereas when the nation was formed, when you said African American or Black or Negro, you knew exactly who you were talking about. You were talking about the people who I once enslaved. So
right.
Now that we're in the 21st century America, when there's such a diversity of Black people from around the world that have come here, other people who have gone through things, that specificity is important. And again, I come back to, they will knock this down in court. I don't know if anybody saw Fox News when Tucker Carlson was already making the argument, like, well, I don't know what this means in terms of, well, who's eligible? Like, does the Nigerian who just got here, who makes $100,000 a year, is
right.
he eligible?
Right.
Then you have Candace Owens over here saying, don't nobody need reparations? I'm Caribbean and I made it. Do I get it too?
Of
like
course.
that eligibility knocks that down. And again, it kind of helps to get around the attack that's coming, because it is coming. People on the right, they're going to come and say this is a violation of equal protection clause. Even though it was meant for us, they often weaponize it in courts, to knock down or roll back our rights, including affirmative action, where they say diversity is now a state interest instead of being specific about Black folks. So if you're going to get around that, it has to be lineage based, not simply race based, or they will knock it down. And also that eligibility criteria, it shuts one of the dumbest arguments down, because a lot of them, they're playing dumb. They know a lot of the, well, America's playing dumb. A lot of people on the right are playing dumb. Like they know that, a lot of Black immigrants who came here, whether in the 80s or the 90s, are brought from the top tier of their country, that they didn't go through that experience. So they're doing it intentionally to muddy the waters, to create confusion. That eligibility criteria cuts through a lot of that nonsense, and we can get to working on real solutions here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I agree with all of that. And thank you for that explanation.
If I could say one more thing about the ancestry,
Mhm.
I mean, and this is another issue where America tries to play dumb. It's really not that hard. You know, my own mother
Right.
grew
To
up.
find out. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's all it took was one conversation with my mother. You know, just growing up. You know, I know that her grandmother was enslaved. Like
Right.
she grew up knowing this person.
Right.
Like this person was somebody's property at some point, and she
Right.
knew that person. Like I can reach out and touch it. Like I can reach out or before she passed, I could reach out and touch my great grandmother, you know, whose parents were enslaved.
Right.
I mean, it's right there in front of us.
I had literally one conversation with my mom as well too, and she was like, "Well, we don't have to go back too far." You know what I mean? Like it's not even something that a lot of people have to maybe even do like a 23andMe or go back to their ancestry and do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's lineage based. We're not doing the DNA thing. That's that's a red herring. It's a straw man that people like to throw out there. We're not talking about DNA. We're talking about lineage.
Thank you. All right, y'all. We're going to continue going. Yep, here we go. Lineage based, lineage matters. Absolutely, you guys in the chat. Kim, Todd, Shanna, thank you guys for joining. We have 3 more edits we're going through right now for HR40. Let's bring them up. We just finished the eligibility criteria, which is not in the bill specified. Again, we're talking about specificity here, being specific so that we know that it is ADOS who is eligible and is supposed to receive these reparations. This is what we are here and fighting for. All right. So let's get to the next. So this claim here, and this one I definitely want to throw to you, Reggie, because as I was reading the bill through, I really want to make clear to myself and the audience, everyone who's listening to this, because we're in a moment right now where that year of 1619 is so prevalent, is so important, which it is important. But in this edit here, we are talking about a different date, a different year. And I want to really talk about why it's important and why Sandy Darity has really put forward this this edit to HR40 to really, focus in on 1776 to the present as this justice claim. All right. So this edit reads as follows. The relevant window for the Black American claim for reparation dates should be from 1776 to the present, not 1619, as the bill currently reads. And we'll jump over to that in a moment. But the bill currently reads from 1619 to the present. Since the claim for redress must be made on the U.S. government, the beginning date for the claim should be associated with the founding of the republic, not the landing of enslaved persons at Jamestown, Virginia, right? So really focusing on 1776. Can you please elaborate on why that is really so important? And I'm going to pull up what it says in the bill. I've actually shown this next one earlier in the broadcast, but can you please elaborate on why really focusing on that 1776 year is important?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to the culpable party, which is the United States. In 1619, while it's important in terms of understanding the history and how the United States came to be, in 1619, there was no United States.
Right.
There were colonists, there were colonies of King George. So we're not going after King George. Like if you want to plant your flag at 1619 and go scream at the crown, good luck with that. We're talking about America. And America was founded as a republic in 1776. So we go from 1776 to 1865, and then we also tie into the claims, forward. But if you start at 1619, again, if I go to court, I'll just say you have no standing. There was no America in 1619, and all of this work, all of this activism goes out the window over one number.
You really think
no sense. I feel that they would kill that on day one. Like they'll just say 1619, there was no America, and throw it out.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me. As I was reading over, these edits and just knowing about them. So are we saying, because I do want to clarify this, are we saying we're throwing out over 100+ years? What exactly does that mean in terms of this, this bill?
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean throwing out 100 years. Like I said, it's great for understanding the history and how the United States came to be. But what we are talking about and who we are bringing a claim against is the United States.
Right.
There was no United States in 1619. Granted, there were the pieces of the puzzle that would come together to form what is now the United States. But the fact remains, there was no United States. If you pass this bullshit, you're dead. It's over.
There it is. And the year 1619, again, it's almost being popularized. It's so trendy now, right? For Juneteenth, I mean, amazing, right? We have wow in the comments here, exactly, right? So again, specificity is key. This is a big one. I think this is going to be, one of the biggest ones to fixing HR40 that will have, a hump that we'll have to get over, because folks are fixated on that 1619, right? So being specific will be super important. Let's continue on to the next one, our fifth in the fix hashtag fix HR40, of which I would say actually this is probably one, I don't know, they're all important, right? We want to get these all fixed. But really, you mentioned it at the beginning, talking about the mean versus the median of white families versus Black families, and it's just in shambles. They talk about people's Twitter mentions are in shambles. No, that gap is in shambles. Okay, so that takes us here to our number 5 edit of HR40. All right. Let me get this off the screen. Sorry, guys. Here we go. HR40 needs to really have an effective racial wealth gap redress solution. Okay. The commission should be charged with developing a proposal, an actual proposal. We'll go next into what the bill says currently, but the commission right now is not charged to make an actual proposal for redress that will eliminate the gulf in Black and white wealth in the United States. While Black Americans constitute 13% of the nation's population, they possess less than 3% of the nation's wealth. A reparations plan should be designed to bring the Black share of wealth at least into alignment with the Black share of the population. And just going forward until before we talk about it, to look at what it says currently, right? Sorry, guys. Don't want to go to number 6. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Hold on one second. I was going to go directly to actually the bill itself, because a lot of those things are not in there to really close, like it's being specific about closing the racial wealth gap is not in there. Did you want to say something real quick while I go to it? You could start kind of expounding on the mean versus the median, that racial wealth gap and its importance.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point that the commission be charged with coming up reparations proposals that, among other things, closes the racial wealth gap. Like, this is a capitalist society that was built off our labor, and off our very bodies. Our bodies were capital. So any reparations proposal that does not include capital is not reparations. I don't care what anybody says. Take it how you want it. If money is not a part of it, it is not repair, because the damage, of course, it was psychological, spiritual, political, social, all of those things. But what it mainly was a wealth building enterprise, a capitalist enterprise. So if you do not repair that damage, you have not repaired me. So closing the wealth gap has to happen. And in terms of the median and the mean, we refer to the median a lot, which is great, because the median means the middle. It helps you understand what's going on with the typical family. So when you look at the typical family, in Boston, you see $8, you see $200 in Los Angeles, you see 11 in Florida, and other places. But when you close it, you have to close it at the mean, because of what we referred to before in terms of stratification economics. The black-white wealth gap is exacerbated because wealth is aggregated and hoarded at the top. So unless you close it at the mean, at the average, you leave out a great deal of what was stolen and what continues to be hoarded. Because if we talk, and what they mistakenly say in the bill, they say we have around 17,000 or so, like 5 figures in wealth, when we know that when you take away depreciating assets, we have 1,700 as opposed to about 150, 160, 170 so thousand for white families. So the wealth gap is 100 to 1, whereas HR40 says it's like 13 to 1 or some nonsense. That's why, the numbers matter. But when you take the average, in order to close that gap at the mean, would mean around 800,000 or so, in wealth. So
that's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yes, it's a huge difference. But again, it takes into account what whites, the top decile of whites have hoarded. So the fact that you let the top 1% run off with the bag, that's not my problem. The debt is still the debt. Close it at the mean.
Absolutely. And I was pulling up, I saw it was a little small on the screen, so y'all, I took it down. But just to talk about what the bill does have in there currently, is a lot of other things. One, I'm going to read just a few of them, right? So in their findings, they are going to, let me see, in consideration of the commission's findings, any form of compensation to the descendants of enslaved Africans is calculated. How that will be calculated, right? What form of compensation should be awarded? Okay, so that right there leaves it completely open, what form of compensation, right? But how the compensation should happen, it needs to be specified, again, under this edit that we're talking about, right? It has a lot of, again, please go ahead and do your Googles on HR40. It has a lot more. Of course, we're doing things like identifying and compiling the documentation of the institution of slavery, but really having this specificity in there around the racial wealth gap specifically in this time is super important. So that's one of the major things, because without that, it could leave it open to too many things that define reparations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Compensation has to be a part of it, and that's why that edit is important. That the commission be charged with coming up with solutions that close the racial wealth gap, and that
Absolutely.
chasm of wealth is so wide. You cannot close that without direct compensation. You can't just say, "Oh, let me throw some loans in here, this or that." Even though that's fine, but without direct compensation, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Because I think one of the biggest arguments is that, we cash payments, all ADOS is wanting cash payments. That's one of the biggest arguments and humps around reparations that is specific to this edit here. That
it's not the only thing, but it is the crucial thing. Like I said, without cash, it ain't reparations. You could
There
do
you go.
everything else, but
Yep.
if you don't cut that check, you're not speaking my language.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you guys, we have one more edit. And then we're going to talk about really how we can rally around, hashtag fixing HR40, and why a lot of folks have already seen this on Twitter, on Facebook, on all of our socials, as a campaign of advocacy, and where, we talked about, building up to where we are now with the bill. Now it's time to advocate to really fix it. If this is what we got, if this is what we're working with right now, we should be advocating around it. So that's what we're here for. All right, let's get to this sixth and final edit, which talks about the time length. All right, I'll bring it up right here. All right. So, talking about the time that it should take this commission to finish this, we are proposing and liking to fix the bill to have an 18-month deadline, in and out. Let's get it done. The commission should be directed to complete its report, inclusive of a detailed prescription for legislation to enact a reparations program for Black Americans within 18 months of its impaneling. All right. And this means the 18 months to put it into effect, correct?
Yeah, 18 months to complete their work and put out their report. They'd have 18 months, because I believe it's open ended. When you look at the text of HR40, it doesn't give a specific end date. So what that means, especially when you couple it with compensation, I could drag this on. Like, if I'm on the commission, I could drag this on for 5 years, do nothing, and walk away a millionaire.
Right.
That's not acceptable. So
right.
Whether compensated or not, that 18 months puts the onus on the commission to get it done. And it also helps in terms of, because there's a real sense of urgency, because we're before COVID, we were on the path to zero wealth. I believe we're there now. We've if you just add up the rent we owe, if you just add up the back mortgages, and you couple that with the massive unemployment in the Black community, I don't know if that's.
You think we're there now?
I don't know if that $1,700 in wealth is even there. I'm not sure it's there. I'm pretty sure it's zero now, especially since we haven't gotten any relief. And again, all that relief is going to the top. Like this, we can't drag this out, especially in a COVID America. Get it done. And I would say, in addition to the 18 months, you got to put some money on it. When you go to buy a house, or you make an offer for a transaction, you put money on the table. Like if say, hey,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna purchase this house, I'm gonna go through this transaction. Here's my down payment. And
Yeah.
I feel given the history of this country, it would go a long way. Just put something on it.
Yeah.
Put, the wealth gap is, about 13-14 trillion dollars. Put a trillion on it, put that 10% down, let me know it's real. Give descendants of slaves relief immediately. I would say make it tax free,
Yeah.
that it not count as income, that you don't count it against any other subsidies people may be receiving, whether in terms of healthcare, whether in terms of housing. That has to come as economic relief and stimulus so we can do what we need to do. Because I guarantee you, once that check comes, they're going to say, well, take away this, take away that. Like, nope, you still got to fix me. Keep my health care there. Keep these subsidies there. Keep all of it there, tax free. And if I want to go play in the markets and I make some gains, no capital gains for me. Nobody taxes this. It's a repayment of a debt. It's not income. I would argue, that even though it would be serve as a stimulus, that it's not even a stimulus. It's a repayment of a debt. No taxes.
Absolutely. So time frame, and it being a repayment of a debt. Yeah, that's I think an edit or a suggestion that the co-founder of ADOS, Antonio Moore, put forward.
Yeah, is Antonio Moore.
He said put some money on it. So we know it's real. Give us some assurance.
Absolutely. I mean, and like I said, that's a down payment. It's not just the trillion and you're done. There's more checks after that. There's more in terms of land, in terms of carving out a space, in terms of the government spends this much on black media, this percentage on SBA loans, that you get the lead out of my water, you get the feces out of my backyard, you deal with the environmental racism, and on top of that, you repay the debt, the monetary debt.
This is heavy, y'all. This is heavy, and it's going to take some work, and it's going to take some advocacy, which is why we're here today. I just want to say what I have up on the screen here is what the bill actually says about the timeline that they can take to work on a report. So the first C says the first meeting will take place 120 days, right, after the date of the act. So first of all, they have 4 months till they get started, okay? And then after that, it says they have a year, the second part under the report to Congress, they have a year to report. So that's actually less than 18 months, right? But what's important to look at is what Reggie was mentioning is here it says they shall submit a written report of findings and recommendations, but there's no guarantee they could go back to the drawing board. It's just, like you said, an open-ended commission that doesn't necessarily have an end date, dropping out into the ocean, basically, right? So it's very important, y'all. I'm going to go back to what this edit is. Again, we give them an 18-month deadline, and what it should inclusive of a detailed prescription for legislation to enact a reparations program for Black Americans within 18 months. Okay. And again, going back to what Reggie said about.
Sorry, if I could jump in, because it kind of speaks to Darity's genius on the topic, that a detailed prescription for legislation. So in so many words, they're kind of doing the framework for actually writing bills. Whereas in HR40, just give me your report. Darity says, nope, give me the legislation. So the bar's raised and you have that 18-month deadline. So shout out to him.
Yes, absolutely. All right, folks. So those are our 6 edits to HR40. Were there any more? I feel like you were mentioning something. Did we miss anything? Those are 6 major ones. But
yeah, I think that and the money and the specificity of of ADOS as far as that identity and just that. And a lot of people said it in the chat that this is going to take work. You got to call your Congress people.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to have a conversation with my congresswoman, who I think is great in terms of advocacy and how she engages constituents, if I were to come to her and she doesn't understand that I have to start at 1776 and 1619, that if I explain it to her the way I explained it to y'all, if she doesn't get that, then I'm like, okay, she doesn't need to be here. And I feel like that should be the rule for anyone in the Congressional Black Caucus. Like if you can't start there, and then we have other conversations in terms of the specificity of the claim and make the argument for that, argue for cash. But if you can't do something as simple as 1776, then I don't need or want you here. Just get them out.
Yeah. So it's going to be tough. I think again, it's going to take this type of advocacy that we have going on right now on socials right here. I just put up on the screen, what's up, Shout Out Friday. I think limiting the commissioners by profession is a problem. And it's really going to take, a lot of advocacy. We're going to have to bring people in. I like to liken this to a lot of campaigns, such as, there's campaigns like Schools and Community, there's Prop 16, there's, the ACA, what is that? ACA 5, I think that is Prop 16, sorry. But just look at the marketing, right? This is someone who's speaking as a marketing person, and the marketing, the breadth of advocacy that this is going to take is major, and it's going to take just that consistent drumbeat and heartbeat. What are some things that you suggest folks can do around advocating, including social media, around advocating around these edits? What are some other ways that we can really probably try to push these edits forward? That you think?
I would say, well, before COVID, I would have said show up to the town halls. I don't think it's a mistake that different Congress people react the way they react, because a lot of people who are part of ADOS chapters, not only are they activists, those are your actual constituents that decide whether or not you have a job. So showing up to the town hall and engaging your representative, engaging their staff, following up with calls and emails like, we talked about this, where are we, and a constant drumbeat, and also getting your family and community on board. Because if you can't sway your family, then I don't know how you're going to get out in the streets and do that. And again, or organizing with like minds, getting involved in your ADOS chapter or whatever organization you're a part of, and just using that collective voice to push that issue forward. And it has to be a consistent drumbeat. And the country needs to understand, and specifically the Democrats, because we vote mostly Democrat, that if you do not deliver, you don't get the vote. The vote is not free. It's an exchange for you giving me what I need. And what I need and what my people need is reparations. You can dance around it all you want, but if you do not deliver on reparations, I do not deliver for you at the polls. And in terms of the presidency, neither one is delivering, so neither one gets the vote. Now, Senate, your senator, your congressperson, you may decide, you're feeling their advocacy, but if not, take that ballot down further. If your governor's not talking the way you want him to talk, take him or her out too. We see some of the mayor's councils forming in terms of advocating around reparations. If you go to your mayor and you say, hey, the mayor of Louisville is talking resolution on reparations. Where are you? And if their answer is I don't know, then I don't know if I'm going to vote for you.
Right.
We have to be ready to go there.
Yeah.
All the way down to dog catcher. We're going to show up to the polls, but whether or not you get that vote when I go in that booth, that depends on your advocacy for the descendants of slaves. I built the country. You
absolutely
pay the debt.
Absolutely. There it is, folks. Thank you guys. I added some of the comments in there as far as advocacy here at the end. Again, town halls, emails, stay consistent, show up, retweet, schedule a tweet that goes out every once a week about it. We will have to stay on this. We will have to follow this. I think also the last thing I'll say is that, with the uprising and the more attention to reparations that George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery has brought just this past, during this COVID time, a few months ago or in the past month, has also, again, given another spike to, interest in reparations, interest in this bill, getting more co-sponsors on it. But, to be honest, we can't have, reparations can't wait. Hashtag reparations can't wait. We can't keep having these incidences to, bring people's attention to this bill. Who wants that? You know what I mean? So it's going to take our advocacy in between these different incidences or spikes, and consistently being on top of it to really get people's attention. I think right now is a perfect time because we do have people's attention. So folks, use your socials, use your YouTubes as we're doing. Shout out to all the ADOS chapters in the building. We see y'all. And anything else you want to wrap it up before we roll out? Hashtag fix HR40.
Hashtag fix HR40 or just write a new damn bill. Advocate. Because especially with how vulnerable we are during COVID. Just as someone who's in real estate, there's a tsunami coming that I don't think people are really prepared for.
Yeah.
I read an article today that we can expect about 40 million evictions during this time, and I guarantee
how many of those are ADOS?
I guarantee you it's disproportionately ADOS. We're already 40% of the nation's homeless, if I have my numbers correct. In terms of homeless families, we're above 50%.
Yeah,
that's going to skyrocket, and I think it will have a particular effect on Black women, who the Democrats love to say are the backbone of the party. The eviction rate for Black women mirrors the eviction rate for Black men in this country, and we know that there are more Black men incarcerated in the United States than there are women on the planet. So what does that mean for Black women in terms of eviction? And that was before COVID. It's going to be a disaster. If y'all don't get on the ball, it's going to be a mess. I mean, and either we're going to be on the street or the CBC is going to be on the street. Pick which one that is. That it's gonna have to come to that, because there's not that fire is not reflected across the whole of the CBC. It's definitely not reflected among the rest of Congress. So yeah, somebody got to hit the road. It's going to be you or them.
Let's get on it, folks. Let's get on it, ADOS. Spread the word, share this, like, subscribe. Reggie, thanks so much for joining this channel all the way from Boston. ADOS California, we're out. Please like and subscribe and share. Thanks so much, guys.